Hello there, my RPG lovers, and welcome to another video. Outwards 2 Early Access is officially coming out on July 7th. In the meantime, we have a closed beta on May 26th, and I got to play this version of the game a bit earlier. I already covered the previous version of the game, which was like an alpha build, but it was pretty cool to see a new area and some new features that we can find in the sequel. This time around, the beta version of the game brings us some more new features and content, like the big new city, new zone, gameplay features that we never saw before, and overall a much smoother experience compared to previous alpha builds. So we're going to talk about all of this and my personal experience with the beta. But before that, please support the content by listening to today's sponsor. Raiders of Blackvale, the action roguelite RPG, just had the biggest update yet. The Gulag update brought a brand new biome for the raids, new enemies and bosses, and new gameplay systems. All champions in the game now have unique talent points that you can get upon leveling up, and these talents can drastically affect your builds. Combined with another brand new feature called Perk Plus system and new items, the build variety became much better. If you don't watch your step in the Gulag, the new surveillance system can spawn powerful elite enemies, which adds an interesting twist to every room. There is a brand new mini-boss that you can stumble upon, and finally, the big boss fight at the end with some really cool mechanics. Warden is a two-phase boss fight that will seriously put your build to the test. Huge thanks to Wombo Games for reaching out to the channel once again and sponsoring this video. I mentioned that this beta is much smoother compared to previous versions of the game, and that's true, but I have to mention some technical problems that I had. First of all, this is to be expected in early versions of the game, but it's also important to give the studio some feedback. I only had a handful of crashes in total, but my biggest problem with the beta was interacting with UI elements. No matter what I do with the UI, like opening my bags, switching tabs, or talking to people and merchants, the game has huge stuttering issues. But only when using these UI elements, and it's funny because the normal gameplay was very smooth for the most part. Only when I start interacting with any of these UI elements I mentioned, I notice huge stuttering issues after every button input. While this affected my experience with the beta quite a bit, it was not game breaking. And I'm pretty sure that 9dots will address these issues, and all of this will be fixed in future patches and updates. Hopefully they will manage to do it before the early access release, and I'm curious to see if other people had similar issues. Putting that aside, let's talk about the actual game. Before starting the beta, you get to customize your character. Now, this is nothing new because this feature was present in previous versions of the game, but this time around we got some more options within the character customization system. If you missed my previous video or you don't remember watching it, I already showcased the character customization system in Outward 2. It had a pretty decent amount of options, but I'm pretty sure they added some more, like options for more facial hair and a couple of more things. The character creation system doesn't only affect the looks of your character, it's also related to RPG stats and the starting area. You get to pick around 3 different options for your background, and you get different stats depending on these choices. Speaking of new things, there is a pretty good tutorial that you can go through before starting a new game, and I highly recommend trying it out, if you get to play the closed beta. It has a bunch of different rooms that will explain all major features of the gameplay. By the way, you can go and sign up on Steam in order to get into this closed beta if you're interested in trying it out. Anyway, if you never played an Outward game before, the tutorial will tell you a lot of things you definitely should know, and it's much better than the bare bones tutorial that we could find in Outward 1. The beta has a brand new cutscene that will introduce a brand new city called Simeon's Bastion. And this is already my favorite city out of all cities in both Outward games. Outward 1 had some pretty cool cities, and Habub in Outward 2 is nice, but Simeon's Bastion is on another level. It looks amazing and it's fun to explore, while not being tedious to navigate. It has more than a couple of districts with indoor areas that you can visit, and you start the game at the clinic. There is a good reason for that, because you get beat up and robbed in the cutscene again. You'll get to talk with one of the doctors, which are these cool looking creatures, and after that you're free to explore the world. Let me just show you a couple of things related to the city, because I was really impressed with how it looks. It's not only about the looks though. The city has multiple floors to explore, a busy merchant area, some protesters and shady figures, a big royal palace, bay area with a separate zone to explore, and so on. All of this is done very well, and if you want to explore everything, you'll also find a lot of useful items in the city alone. The vibe of this city is simply amazing. That being said, the city is very light on the content. Not only the city, but the whole beta in general doesn't have a lot of content in terms of the quests you can do. Although I failed a quest that was probably important, and maybe there were more quests to take if I completed that one. I only found a handful of other quests to do in the whole beta. Timed quests are back from the first game. Outward 2 will keep the track of some quests that are time limited, and you can only complete some of the quests when certain conditions have been met. It also has your typical RPG quests, where you have to fetch something for NPCs. I'm pretty sure that the full game will offer a lot more quests and things to do in general. There is still no voice acting at all for NPCs, and I think that's another feature that we can expect to see in the future updates. On the other hand, there is a lot of exploration to do in this version of the game once you leave the city. You have around 3 different paths to take, and it's all up to you how you want to explore the map. Some of the quests you can take in the city are related to nearby areas. Speaking of quests, some of them require you to do something very specific. Like I mentioned before, certain conditions have to be met in order to complete some quests. For example, the doctor that saved your life in the beginning wants some special flowers. The flower is not easy to find, but he tells you that you can find it in a place with a great view of the city or something similar to that. And that's not all, he also tells you that you have to wait for the rain before you can even try to pick it up, although there are some other ways of getting the dampening effect on yourself. I think quests like this are very cool, and I would like to see more of them in the full game. The weather effects are way more intensive and more varied in the sequel, and they can change the look of the game quite a bit. Not to mention different seasons that some zones will have, similar to how Outward 1 worked, at least when it comes to one of the zones. The zone in the beta has a very balanced weather, so you don't have to use the armor with special effects. What I really like about the level design is that you can find a secret passage to the city from other side of the map. You can't enter this area normally from the city, and I was wondering how to get in and if it's even possible. It's obvious that this is supposed to be a placeholder for a new quest or two, which could be really fun to do in some future updates. The level design is pretty good in general, and the open world exploration is no different. As a matter of fact, both of these areas I got to explore in early versions of Outward 2 have a noticeably better open world design compared to the first game. Why? Well, it's kinda hard to put my finger on it, but mostly because these areas are denser, there's a lot more things to see, and the visual variety is very strong. It's not like the first game had bad open world areas, but they were definitely not this dense. Hopefully they will manage to fill these areas with a bit more content this time around, because that was one of the biggest critiques for the open world in the first game. What's really cool about a particular zone that's close to the city is that I already explored it before. They used the same zone from the very first demo that I featured on the channel. This zone now serves a special purpose, and it works very similar to that first demo, but it makes way more sense now. The open world definitely feels more alive now. NPCs will patrol areas, and they seem to have a very big range of motion. So it's not uncommon to stumble upon an NPC that you never saw before in the same area that you already visited God knows how many times. This might seem like a small thing, but I actually think it's very important to make the world feel more alive. The first game had nothing similar to this, as far as I can remember. You will meet guards, bandits, and even some very strong enemies that will patrol some areas. They definitely have specific areas where you can always find them, but they will rarely be limited by a small area, they always move around. This open world zone has a great mix of open fields and more narrow areas, which makes it really fun to explore. When it comes to instanced areas, Outward 2 works similar to Outward 1. In other words, dungeons, cities and some similar areas will be separated by a loading screen. That being said, this zone also has some populated places in open areas, like this camp for example. I also stumbled upon an area with hostile giants where you can find a big ship. I'm guessing this area is not completed, and you can maybe take this boat to travel to other areas in the game in future updates. There are some very dangerous zones that you want to avoid in the beginning, but I tried my best to explore absolutely everything, so I can talk about it in this video. I won't spoil everything, of course, or show you all the zones in this video. Notice that I tried to avoid saying the actual name of this area, and there is a good reason for that. It's called Lariskepi? Lariskepi? Yeah, that's not how you pronounce it. The enemy variety seems to be pretty good as well, and I was trying to kill everything I stumbled upon, even though I was very weak for some of them. Most of these NPCs are very similar, if not identical to enemies from the first game, but they all seem to have new combat moves and animations. Speaking of combat moves, Outward 2 feels way better to play. I already talked about this in my previous video, but here's a quick reminder. The control scheme in the sequel is way more responsive, it has slightly better animations and a lot more combat moves. The game also seems to be a bit more generous with the beginning stamina you get, which allows you to dodge a bit more before going out of breath. More importantly, every single weapon type in the game has a lot of different combat moves that you can do from the very beginning. You have 2 buttons for different attacks and you can combine those buttons, which will result in a different attack. Or you can hold them for a stronger attack, combine quick attacks and strong attacks by holding the button and pressing one quickly, and so on, you get the picture. It's totally up to you to learn how all of this works and what's the best thing to use against different enemy types. As usual, I like sticking with two-handed swords, so that's what I use the most. I noticed that the combat AI is pretty good this time around. Enemies will anticipate your hits better, dodge your hits a lot better than before, and they are just smarter in general. I'm pretty sure that the enemy is reading your inputs at least a little bit, so maybe it's not exactly fair, but I enjoy the challenge. Especially because you can still outsmart the enemy with positioning and various combat moves. Some stronger monsters I fought require you to time your dodges or get one shot and just be more careful in general. Enemies will also fight each other quite a bit in this game, even when you're not nearby. That's why you'll find a lot of corpses of humans and other creatures on regular basis, and you can even see these fights far away in the distance. Again, very cool detail, which makes the world feel more alive. One thing I didn't like that much is how easy it is to abuse the death mechanic, or defeat scenarios as the game calls them. Even the first game had some of these issues, and I remember getting killed on purpose just so I can fast travel to a nearby city if I get lucky. Defeat scenarios are supposed to be random and tied to the zone that you're currently in, and you can never actually die in this game unless you play on hardcore. Getting killed feels really cheap in this zone and not that meaningful. For example, in the first couple of hours I focused on trying to kill some nearby bandits so I can complete one of the quests, take their stuff and sell it in the city. I was dying a lot because I had shitty gear, but I also kept coming back and trying to finish them off and keep filling up my bags with all their stuff so I can sell everything in the city. The point is, dying doesn't feel like a big deal, but a minor inconvenience. On the other side, you can suffer from some serious injury or a similar debuff that can be annoying to remove, at least for some time. So, I don't know, maybe they will try to add more defeat scenarios in the future that will mix things up and work on this feature even more. It's not like dying doesn't feel punishing, because you can still get those debuffs I mentioned, but it's more annoying than anything. You will quickly memorize those couple of different respawn points you get and just continue where you left, which is completely fine, but like I said before, it removes some challenge from fighting enemies, that's for sure. Oh yeah, enemies won't heal at all, so when you come back and fight them again, it's much easier to deal with them. Again, this feels very exploitable, but it's too early to critique the balancing of the game and the overall experience. On the other side, Outward 2 doesn't have any difficulty settings, so this is actually a clever game design. So some of these features are actually a part of a clever game design. I love when studios are trying to implement difficulty settings within the gameplay itself, rather than having them as options in the menu. Then we have a brand new gameplay feature that can affect the build of your character quite a bit. It looks like a big passive skill tree, but the way you acquire these skills is not exactly what you would expect. Each and every skill in this tree can only be unlocked by doing specific things in the game. Come to think of it, it's like an achievement system which actually gives you useful stats and effects instead of just pointless trophies. So for example, if you want to get more strength or similar stats, you have a certain amount of people to kill. It's not only about killing things though, you can get some of the skills by doing various activities like crafting and gathering, and you can clearly see these requirements if you point on the skills. This system adds another layer of progression in the game, which is pretty cool. And considering that Outward 2 doesn't have skill trees, at least not in a traditional manner, it's cool to see a system like this. Outward 2 has trainers like in Outward 1, where you can learn skills by simply spending some currency. Stronger abilities that you can learn will require some commitment, which is familiar to anyone who played the first game. You get these breakthrough points that you can spend, but only 3 in total. That means that you can only unlock the strongest abilities from 3 trainers in total, to put it simply. The beta features a new skill trainer that's related to making and using traps, for the most part. I did not experiment a lot with this trainer yet, and to be honest, it's not a playstyle that I would be interested in. But a lot of people loved using traps in the first game, so you'll be able to do that in this game as well. Overall, the gameplay in Outward 2 has some major improvements and new features. However, I would still describe this game as Outward 1.5 basically, which is a good thing if you ask me. They improved a lot of things from the first game, while keeping the same philosophy for most of its features. It's still just a beta, so I assume the game will just get better and better. I only hope that early access version of the game will feature both of these areas we got to explore in alpha and beta versions of the game. Whatever the case might be, I'll be there to cover that version of the game as well, so stick around. Anyway, tell me your opinion about this beta version of the game in the comments below, and do you plan to apply for the beta and try it out for yourself? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. And if you want to go a step further, consider supporting your boy by becoming a YouTube channel member or a Patreon. Huge thanks to all my current supporters, and I'll see ya in the next one.